Greetings. Coming to you from the Livermore Valley Chamber of Commerce, I'm Dawn Argula, CEO and President of the Chamber. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today to hear from a health and wellness professional, Winter Brown from Stanford Health Care, ValleyCare. Winter offers a perspective on health and wellness that will help us reset, regroup, and reprioritize as each of us processes the stresses of daily life. Transitioning from one of the most painful periods of time experienced as a result of the COVID-19 virus and its harmful physical and economic impacts to the collective community, this topic is especially timely. I hope that each of you will take something away from this brief but insightful program to take positive steps toward your wellness and inspire those around you. Sincere thanks to our partner today, to Stanford Health Care, ValleyCare, for its legacy of partnership and support of this Chamber of Commerce and for today's event. Today's event is being recorded and the video will be posted on the Chamber website at livermorechamber.org. You are welcome to enter your questions in the chat to be read later in the program. First, a bit of background on Stanford Health Care, ValleyCare. ValleyCare's origins date back to 1961 when Valley Memorial opened in Livermore. In 1991, ValleyCare Medical Center in Pleasanton opened, and over the years, ValleyCare kept pace with the growth in the Valley, expanding to include new and remodeled buildings in Livermore, Pleasanton, and Dublin. In 2015, Stanford Health Care and ValleyCare became partners in order to grow the depth of services and expertise available to the community. Stanford Health Care ValleyCare's mission: to care, to educate, to discover, and its vision: healing humanity through science and compassion, one patient at a time. Now, introducing our speaker and the program, Winter Brown, Ph.D., and there's an awful lot of acronyms here, Winter, that we'll let you describe and explain to us in your program. He has taught yoga for over a decade at local yoga studios, as well as with Stanford Health Care ValleyCare, where she now serves as a clinical instructor in physical and sports medicine. She currently works with cancer patients, cardiac and pulmonary rehab patients, people living with persistent pain and dizziness, and hospital employees. She strives to create inclusive and safe spaces that empower people with mindfulness and movement tools that nourish their holistic well-being. Now, let's welcome Winter Brown. Winter?
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for such a kind introduction. I do have a lot of acronyms behind my name, and they're mostly yoga acronyms, including the fact that I'm a certified yoga therapist. So I've been trained to apply the tools of yoga and mindfulness in settings like the medical setting and with chronic conditions and chronic illnesses. So I'm very happy to be with you today. Thank you so much for inviting me in. I'm going to take a moment to share my screen and get my presentation going. I do have slides for us today. Let me open it up. Okay. Are you able to see the screen okay? Great. Thank you. All right. So well-being for your whole being. And I really loved your introduction, Dawn. I think it's so important to find those ways to reset and to regroup and replenish ourselves on a daily basis. And hopefully we get some ideas about how we might do that during our time together. And really looking at our whole, kind of the holistic sense of our wellness and how we can care for ourselves during times of stress and during times of joy. And so I'd actually like to invite you, if you have a piece of paper nearby or handy, to grab a piece of paper you don't mind drawing on, and to also grab a hold of a pen or a pencil. I've kind of designed this to be interactive and experiential, should you choose to, so that as we're going along, you can kind of start to evaluate where your wellness is at and how you might begin to integrate practices or elements of wellness into your daily life so that you are taking care of yourself. So today we're going to look at wellness's 8 dimensions. And if you kind of type up wellness and what it is, you'll actually get, there's a whole range of dimensions, from as few as 4 to as many as 12 or 16. I like 8. SAMHSA also uses 8, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and quite a few other experts in the wellness area kind of look at 8 dimensions. So we'll look at what those are. We'll evaluate and kind of align our values with the goals that we might start to generate for our own wellness, and then create some SMART goals. So as we're going along, hopefully there's not only the educational piece, but really how it starts to apply to your own life. So what is wellness? I'm going to offer up a couple of different definitions. Wellness from the Global Wellness Institute is the active pursuit of activities, choices, and lifestyles that lead to a state of holistic health. Or if we look at the definition provided by SAMHSA, wellness is about how we live our lives and the joy and fulfillment and health that we experience. So really, it's beyond our physical sense of well-being, maybe even beyond how much we're exercising, how much, kind of what foods we're eating, though those are definitely a part of our wellness. When we start looking at wellness, we want to really look at all the different dimensions of our life and where we're able to find fulfillment, where we're finding things that really revitalize us, give us a sense of purpose or meaning, to help us feel connected to ourselves, to other people, and continue to feed our own growth, which is a lifelong process. So these 8 dimensions of wellness includes the environmental, right? Where we're at in space, what our actual living environment looks like, our work environment looks like, the financial element of our life, occupational, right? How satisfied we are in our jobs, how fulfilling we find our jobs, our own intellectual pursuits, right? Are we kind of continuing to grow and to learn and to challenge our brain, or to dive into different topics? The spiritual sides of ourselves, our physical well-being, which may be what most comes to mind when we think about wellness and maybe kind of where we're most familiar, our social well-being, and then our emotional health. So we're going to look at all of these one by one. Now on your piece of paper, I'd like to invite you to draw a circle on your piece of paper and then create 8 slices in that circle so it looks like a pie. And once you've done that, our next step is to label each slice. And you could do you could jot down a note. You don't have to write down all of these labels if you want, if you have shortcuts for those labels, but labeling each slice. So we have 1 slice per dimension, right? Our financial, our occupational, environmental, emotional, social, spiritual, physical, and intellectual. And as we go through the different slides, when we talk about each of these dimensions, I invite you to kind of shade in how satisfied you are with that slice, right? And if you prefer numbers to shading, you're welcome to do that. But think about the higher the number you assign, or the more that you shade into your slice, it represents the greatest, like how fulfilled you feel in that slice. Right? So if maybe there's some room for growth, it might not be a full slice. If you feel really great. You're doing a lot in that slice. It feels really good. It might be a really full slice. So as we kind of go along, I'm going to invite you to kind of fill in where you're at this kind of in each of these little dimensions. So let's take a look. Our environmental wellness, right? When we're looking at environmental wellness, we're looking at change of scenery, our home and work environments, and green living. And this is really kind of in general, our capacity to be safe and to feel safe in the spaces that we reside in. We spend a lot of time at work. We spend potentially an equal amount of time at home. How clean are they, right? Do we have access to clean air, for instance, clean food and water? Does the areas that we live in, are there areas for open space, for opportunities for us to be in nature? We're lucky, we're living in Livermore. There's so many opportunities for open space. Livermore's been really thoughtful about how it's developed and grown as a town. And so there's so many available areas for us to go into and to really explore and be in nature. And then, also kind of, are the environments that we find ourselves in really pleasant, right? Do they stimulate us? Do they satisfy us on kind of a visceral, aesthetic level, right? So when we're thinking about green living, this would be things like recycling, or how you're kind of working to preserve the environment, whether it's reducing your power or reducing your water. If you're spending time outside as much as you're able to for that kind of change of scenery, right? Or if you kind of feel like and we felt this especially early in the pandemic when a lot of things were shut down, right? We were kind of contained within our homes and we weren't getting a lot of that change of scenery. Maybe we're taking opportunities now that things are beginning to change and things are opening up to be outdoors more. Are you organizing your workspace or your home space in such a way that you have, it feels organized and it helps you feel happy? Those are kind of the things we would want to think about in environmental wellness. And so if you are kind of shading in your piece of pie or you're writing down a number, thinking about environmental wellness as a whole, how satisfied are you with kind of where you're at right now? And then let's look at financial wellness. This one we probably think about a lot, right? And this is really about our capacity to kind of live well, right? Live without the fear of debt, which again, coming out of the last year, may or may not have felt a lot of strain from the pandemic. And this could be a source of real stress for you. And so recognizing that, maybe there are also other places in here that we can start to find a sense of control. And we'll kind of get to that a little bit later on. But our financial wellness is really, does it feel like the work that we're doing not only helps us pay our bills, but also feels personally fulfilling? And we'll get into that a little bit more under occupational wellness, but it's one element of the financial wellness, right? Is that, are you experiencing a lot of debt, right? That can really weigh on us pretty heavily and impact our financial wellness. Are there ways in which, or would it be helpful to figure out ways to incrementally pay down your debt in a manageable way? Or maybe there are resources in the community, federal government, what have you, that also help you kind of look at that and manage that. Maybe looking also too for resources. The Chamber of Commerce might be a source there. Are your savings in line with your life goals? And again, this might have been a year where we've dipped heavily into savings. And so maybe there's an opportunity to start thinking about rebuilding, right, or continuing to grow them. So thinking through your financial wellness, I know it's one of those, can be a tricky or uncomfortable area to think about, or even for that, for that matter, maybe an area of a lot of dominance, just depending upon where you're at. And thinking about if you were to kind of fill in or kind of provide a ranking for your sense of your own financial wellness right now, what is that? I meant to mention this, and I hope I'll take the opportunity now while we're kind of at the beginning of these dimensions is I really hope or encourage you to approach this with kind of the mindfulness or the equanimity that mindfulness encourages us to have, which is sometimes we can start to look at some of these dimensions, and depending upon how we're shading them, right, how fulfilled we feel in them, to assign it as good or bad, or to experience a whole bunch of different emotions around them. And this is really our opportunity to just have some information about where we're at right now. It's a snapshot in time, and it's a snapshot coming at a very particular point in our time. So taking that into account as you kind of keep moving forward. Let's take a look at occupational wellness. This is really about how fulfilled and meaningful we find and purposeful we find our work, right? So when we think about work relationships, does your work offer personal satisfaction and stimulation? Does it allow you to contribute your talents, your gifts, your knowledge? If you're accomplishing things at work, right, are you able to kind of pat yourself on the back for those accomplishments? Are you kind of writing them down and keeping track of them? Sometimes if we look over the year, we forget all that we've accomplished over the course of the year unless we're very actively kind of noting that down for ourselves. Is there good work-life balance for you? Are you scheduling time if you need to for leisure? And again, kind of based on this last year, it might be that maybe there's more leisure, maybe there's less leisure, but we still need that opportunity to rest, right, and recuperate. So finding ways to bring that back in, knowing that will support the whole of our success in our occupation. Okay, next we have intellectual wellness. And this is, again, those things that help keep our brains really active and kind of keep our intellect expanding. And we have so many lovely opportunities here in Livermore, whether it's the Bankhead Theater, which is back up and offering programs in person, that they've been offering them online all year, the library, the Chamber of Commerce. There's so many opportunities to start to really look at ways that we can dive into our personal interests, for instance. Maybe there's something that we picked up during COVID that we're really excited about. We want to teach other people, or we want to share that with other people. Maybe there's something that we want to continue learning more about or getting more information about. And so we might look into continuing education or workshops or trainings that help us continue to expand our knowledge base and the ways in which we're using those, right? Those skills, that knowledge in our daily lives. Are we keeping our minds sharp by using games, puzzles, mind teasers, all those other fun and memory enhancing games that we know are really good for keeping the brain sharp, learning a new language, learning music, all those fun things? And do you have opportunities for conversations? And I think what's interesting to hear about intellectual wellness is oftentimes when we're looking at this, it's not just conversations among our loved ones and our family members and our friends, but conversation across a diversity of people. So we're really getting a variety of perspectives on different issues or topics. Again, that can be sometimes more stress-inducing than not, just depending upon what those conversations are and what the issues are you're kind of discussing. And so kind of noticing too, right, as you're making those decisions around what kinds of conversations are allowing for maybe compassionate expansion versus the opposite, right? So again, we're not creating more stress in our life because we might think that we need to, for the sake of our intellectual wellness, right? Our spiritual wellness. So our spiritual wellness really represents our personal beliefs and values. And that could be through a faith, it could be through a different path, right? Maybe a sense of, but it's what it kind of encourages not only that sense of meaning and purpose in our life and in ourselves, but also that maybe a sense of balance or peace in ourselves. And so recognizing that meaning and purpose is important to us as humans, and then maybe developing too alongside that an appreciation for the universe, its magic, its mysteries, all that is occurring around us on a daily basis, right? And mindfulness, I would probably put into a spiritual practice, right? And it's part of the wonderful thing, again, this is my bias coming from a mindfulness background, is that it really does help me, at least, be appreciative of what's happening right here and right now, right? Looking at the wonders of the world on a very ordinary, specific basis, right? So spirituality is kind of what allows us to do that, right? So when we're looking at involvement, maybe there's a group in your community that helps you deepen your practice or deepen your beliefs or supports you, connects you with people that share those beliefs. Connection's so important for humans. Maybe it's taking time to engage in those practices of your faith or your spirituality, taking time to appreciate nature. Maybe it's also taking time to think about what your principles are, how you're spiritual, how you're, and what beliefs are important to you. So recognizing this element of ourselves, and kind of inviting again that the opportunity to kind of shade in or fill in how fulfilled you feel here. And now our physical wellness. And again, this is probably what most of us think about when we start thinking about wellness, in part because we are such physical beings. And this is really, right, it's our healthy bodies, it's physical health habits, it's our nutrition, our exercise, appropriate health care, things that really care for our bodies inside and out, right? And so there's a lot of elements in physical wellness that we might look at. And I think too, when we're doing kind of this little pie chart, sometimes it can be hard to know. It might be that you eat really great. You try to provide a lot of vegetables and fruits and fresh food into your life. But maybe the exercise is a little bit less because you're running a business or you're running your life, and that tends to fall to the wayside. So thinking about how you want to balance these different elements, right? And part of this too is about what is important to you or what you're able to do even at this particular moment. But nutrition is a big part of that. So is our physical activity. I do want to say physical activity, sometimes when we think about being physically active, it's about going to the gym or spending X amount of time working out. And it is and can be that, especially now that gyms are reopened. But we can also make our physical activity much more integrated into our day, right? 10 or 15-minute walk during lunchtime. Maybe if you have a couple of minutes between meetings or obligations, taking, again, like a walk or engaging in some kind of physical activity that really resonates with you, that's when we start to fit it in. So that we spend more of our time moving, right, or balancing out movement and sitting, or quite the opposite. Maybe you have a job where you move a lot, and so you want to move differently or rest, right? But taking into account all of that. Our sleep can be a big one that can also get really hit by stress, but trying to get at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep each night. So important for a lot of the healing that happens in the body and a lot of the processing that happens in the brain. Looking at our alcohol, tobacco, and use of other drugs. And so if you feel like you need tools that help you manage this area of your life, seeking out the resources for that. Maybe you feel great about where this is at right now. Medication safety, carrying, knowing when your medications are going, if you have any, when they're going to expire, making sure they're stored safely. And then preventative medicine. Are you seeing your primary care doctor or any of the other care team members that might be a part of your physical health on a daily, not on a daily basis, that would be too much, on a regular basis for routine care. Okay, our social wellness. And for some of us, this got really hard hit in the last year. Zoom is wonderful, but it's not quite the same as face-to-face or person-to-person interactions. And so just recognizing that as humans, we're really kind of wired to be in connection and in community with other people. And this is a large part of our overall health and wellness, is our sense of support. And it's not, I do want to say, right, usually when we're looking at our sense of support or our sense of our network, it's more about quality than it is quantity, right? So when we think about the community, you don't have to have a large community in order to have a really robust social wellness or feel really great in this dimension. But we want to have some community where you feel really supported and you can be with people as yourself and feel appreciated as yourself. That you're maybe getting out and, if possible, meeting new people, which again can be a little more challenging during the pandemic. Things are more open now, but there's still, a lot of hesitancy. Meeting face-to-face with new people or person-to-person meeting new people. So figuring out ways to, if that's important to you, do that in a way that you feel safe about as well. And then also setting aside time for yourself to spend with family and friends, right? So in the same way that we might have to plan for leisure time or plan for physical activity sometimes, if we have a really full calendar, a really full schedule, making sure that you're also scheduling in some time to connect with a friend or a family member. So you're getting that, that support that you need. And then lastly, our last piece of the pie, our emotional wellness. And again, the last year has been challenging. Our emotional wellness is really our capacity to be okay in the midst of challenge, right? To be able to kind of cope with the different stressors that are happening. Sometimes this is called resiliency, that capacity. It can wax and it can wane, much like the moon, right? We can have really deep reserves of resiliency or emotional wellness at some times, and then sometimes it gets drained too much if we're not taking care of ourselves, either within this particular dimension or within some of the others, right? Because it's all interconnected. We can separate them out, but really it's all integrated. And with emotional wellness, we're really looking at that ability to be able to express yourself, express your feelings, feel supported when you're feeling stressed. And so some things that can help that out is actually thinking about your feelings and emotions. Do you think about them? Do you feel like you can talk to anybody about them? There are lots of great resources in the community that can help you. If you feel like you need a more neutral party or maybe a more skilled party than you're finding among your friends and family. Self-care comes into this, right? I will be honest, self-care is usually the last thing on my own plate. It's the one thing that I'm like, oh, I don't have time for that today. But I've been very diligent actually in the last couple of weeks about making that more of a priority in my own life. And my friend is too, so we became self-care buddies. We do daily check-ins via text to try to continue to increase this as a habit for ourselves, because we really do need to be taking care of ourselves. I think sometimes about oxygen masks on flights, right? When they're going over the safety rules and regulations before you take an airplane ride, they talk about the oxygen mask, that you need to put yours on first before you help out another fellow passenger or a child. And it's kind of the same thing with our self-care, right? We need to oxygenate ourselves and make sure that we're doing okay, and then we can really help out another person. So self-care is not selfish. It's so important. And And in part because in this last kind of category, right, it can help us manage our stress. And so sometimes knowing what can stress us out can be helpful, right? It's like acknowledging the elephant in the room. Stress is kind of fascinating just in the way that we're wired. And I actually don't have a lot built into this particular presentation about stress, but with stress, it's really our perception of something that produces that, right? Which means each of us is going to have something else that might trigger that sense of stress and the stress response in our body, right? And that stress response that we get in our body, it's unconscious a lot of the times. It's kind of happens without our control. But if we recognize it's happening and we recognize kind of what those triggers are, what those common stressors are, then we can start to build in practices of self-care that help us calm the system back down, right? So we have a very particular response in our nervous system to stress. And chronic stress can be very challenging for our overall health and our long-term health. So, knowing kind of what stresses you out and ways that you can either support yourself when you're feeling stressed or even potentially reduce those stressors can be really helpful in supporting yourself short-term and long-term, right? And that's all a part of that emotional wellness. And again, though, I talked just a moment ago, right? We can look at these as individual pieces of a pie, but really we're talking about ourselves as a person, right? It's so integrative, and each of these pieces can affect another thing, right? Whether it's a certain source of stress that we might find in the finance or the occupation, that can affect our emotional well-being, right? Whether we're feeling like we have conflict in the workspace, that can affect our emotional and our physical well-being. Sometimes that has effects on our social well-being, whether we reach out to receive support or get support, or we start to kind of shut down. Sometimes it can be, the intellectual side of things. So this is all, it's a way of kind of looking at different parts of ourselves. All of these are incredibly important to nurturing your whole sense of wellness, right? And recognizing that even, sometimes we're not going to be perfectly balanced in each of these, right? And that's just the nature of life. Sometimes work will be really dominant. Sometimes leisure might be really dominant, right? But can we continue to find a balance? So let's see if we can start to look at finding our own sense of balance, right? If you've kind of been going along and either shading in or providing kind of a numerical number for your own kind of dimension in this pie, I invite you to kind of look at your pie, your wellness pie, and maybe there's something surprising about it. Maybe it's something you expected. I can, if I were to draw my pie out, I would expect certain things to be at certain shades, but I might be surprised, right? So just taking a moment to notice that. And then we're going to see if we can start to turn some of this reflection into some action, right? So we're leaving here with something at hand that we can easily and readily do. So looking at your wellness pie, we kind of looked already at what is surprising or expected. Now I'm going to ask you to look at what dimensions are the fullest. And you could give yourself like a pat on the back if you want to for the ones that are really full, because that's great. And going back to that sense of accomplishment, right? Or that appreciation for what we've accomplished. Let's just take a moment to recognize that. And then which ones are less full? And some of those, again, might have been surprises. They might have been expected, but are there some that are less full? And maybe it's pretty evenly balanced, which would be awesome, right? Now, the second question I have is, of the ones that are less full, are there ones that you wish to devote time and energy to in order to create more balance? And as you're thinking about that question, I invite you to kind of think about your values your priorities, and the places that you have control, right? So it might be that one of my dimensions is not very full, but I also don't feel like I have a lot of agency in that, right? That there's not a lot I can change in there. Okay, then maybe that's not the place that I put my energy into right now. And I think about ways that I could create balance in that as I get maybe balance in other ones. Or maybe, you know, there are ones that are not as full, but they're not as important to me. And so maybe I don't want to put a lot of time and energy into that, right? So thinking through kind of where your values are at in this particular pie, right? And places that you have some sense of control, or you would like more control and you think it's possible to get there. I'm going to invite you to create some SMART goals, right? So if we take out, let's say, one or two of those dimensions that you feel like you have some control, it's in line with your values and your priorities, and you'd like to create more balance there. Let's see if we can create a couple of goals that's going to help you start to fill out that pie a little bit more, right? Increase the satisfaction that you're feeling there. Now, you might know that the acronym for SMART goals. These are ways of creating a goal so that it is, we'll just go through the acronym, specific, right? So we're very specifically acknowledging what you want to accomplish and why it's important to you. And I do think sometimes the why is important, right? Because it can help fuel the energy and the commitment, right? So on those days where you're kind of a little less cool, like, I don't know if I want to do that, sometimes the why can be a good driver, right? For why we might want to do it. Is it measurable? So what exactly are we talking about, right? If we're looking at, I'll borrow one of mine. So I'm trying to meditate more each day. And I'm building it up in a certain kind of way, right? So right now my goal is each day I want to meditate. I'm currently at 20 minutes, building up to 30 minutes. That's my SM, right? Achievable. I can accomplish it. It's a chunk of time, but I am going to commit to myself into this goal because for me, this is my self-care. This is how I'm taking care of my emotional wellness. How I'm taking care of my intellectual wellness, right? Just using this as the example. R, relevant. Is it worthwhile to me right now? And is it the right time? Yes. But there might be another thing that I want, but I'm not there yet, right? So my goal of, 45 minutes of meditating, not relevant right now because I don't have the time for that, right? And timely, when am I going to do it? Can I do it now, right? So I have a goal maybe of where I want to be 6 months from now. I don't actually know that I'll get to 45 minutes again because I have time constraints that have more to do with my family and my life, like my work-life balance, right, than it does with my desire. We'll see. That's how we can start to create our SMART goals, right? If maybe it's about nutrition or sleep, right? And so maybe there are things that we can start to do about sleeping more. Maybe I go to bed 15 minutes or 30 minutes earlier than I used to. And I cut out screens before that, right? But taking these things and making them very easy to accomplish, right? Because if we can start to kind of measure it out and it's measurable, achievable, relevant, timely, it's more likely I can integrate it into my life, right? I might have the goal of a 45-minute meditation, but I don't have the wherewithal to do that right now. I'd have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I am not a morning person. I'd have to go to bed at 9 to wake up at 5, and I have children. It's just not happening. So it doesn't make sense for me to create that as a goal, right? I won't achieve it, and then I won't get that feeling of success. And again, and we are kind of wired in so many ways that we want to feel success. I want you to be successful, right? Because if we can integrate it into our daily lives in very manageable chunks, then it's more likely, not only more likely we can do it, but we'll really start to see the fruits of our labor sooner, right? And it's something we can do now versus put off in the future, right? Because can't do it now. Maybe 10 years from now when my children are out of the household, right? So smart goals. And thinking through each of these dimensions, right? Or at least the one or the two that you named as kind of being your top priority or a place where you hold significant value that you'd want more balance. And we don't have to adjust it a lot. We don't have to now pour all of our energy and our time into these two things, right? Whatever you've chosen for yourself. It's this opportunity to create balance that leads ultimately to your overall well-being and your overall happiness and joy, right? That you feel as though you can thrive and you feel as though when there are huge stressors, you've got some things that are going to help you get through it, right? And I love this quote from Brené Brown, right? We don't have to be perfect. Thank goodness. Perfection is so overrated. Just engaged and committed to aligning values to actions, right? And that's, I think, really like the magical formula. If we can get our values and we can get them to kind of drive our actions, and it's really engaging. And again, it's small, right? It's a chunk that I can take and I can put it in my day and I can commit to it each day or every other day. Then wonderful, right? I'm caring for myself. I'm doing something in this dimension that is really going to boost my wellness. And when we're thinking about, again, either recovering from or continuing to maintain a sense of wellness in this pandemic, right? To me, these bite-sized chunks become even more important, right? Because it's what we have available. So we don't have to be perfect, right? Your pie doesn't have to be perfectly balanced. It just needs to be perfectly balanced right now, at this moment, for you. We can align the values, the actions, and our engagement. So if you want more resources into diving deep and continuing to kind of evaluate your own wellness, I'll direct you to a couple of these resources. I did borrow quite a bit from Sam, so I find this to be a very useful PDF, and they've broken it out even more. They have some of the questions that I asked you and then opportunities to kind of write down where you're at, to kind of brainstorm where you're at within each section. They have some resources available, and it's a very approachable place. If you are somebody who loves numbers and you really want to kind of like tally up scores and know where you're at, and you want to break this down even more, then University of Colorado Boulder offers a numerical base. I'm going to see if I can. I'm really tempted to make this. Let's see if this works. And let's see if it shows up. Do you see it? Awesome. I'm seeing some nods. Okay. So you can see you have different ways they break it down again, and they have different kinds of questions, but you can start to kind of evaluate, right? On a scale of 1 to 4, where are you at? And so sometimes it's nice to kind of get this, right? Because again, if I'm thinking about, say, my emotional health, I can start to look at, maybe I'm here on one or two, like a couple of these categories. Maybe it helps me figure out where I might want more support, right? So just recognizing that sometimes it's nice to have something a little more specific and detailed than what we've done together today. So those are both really great resources should you wish for them. And I think that's it. Yes. So thank you very much. I wanted to leave some time for conversation or questions. If you have any questions, or if I can be a resource for you or support for you, please feel free to contact me. My Stanford email is right there. And And that's it. I'm going to stop my share screen and if any questions came in the chat. And then, yeah, see if there's any questions from those of you with me today.
Thank you, Winter. I'm not seeing any questions at the moment in the chat. If any of us have any questions, I think we have some time here that we're happy to entertain those. I think Winter will give us the time on that. This was really very enlightening. I liked your pie chart. That was a nice tool. It was easy. And your list of things. And I think this will be very helpful to folks. I'm going to encourage a lot of folks to just take a moment out of their day or their week to watch this video and to maybe do a little bit of the self-analysis that you had included in your presentation. Because I think here we are, 17 months through this pandemic, and we do need to take the time to reevaluate and reset and set some goals, because we're just got our heads down and we're just trying to get from day to day to day. Oh, it looks like we've got, let's see here, here we go. Your email again. Okay, you entered that. And then the resources that you had on your slides, which by the way, we will have that, the video posted on our website just as soon as it's ready. So y'all can pick those up from the slide. I know I'm going to check out the one. I like numbers.
Yeah.
So I like filling out checklists and things like that. So I'm definitely going to check that out. Anything else from anyone?
No, this was very good. I truly enjoyed it. And it just put a whole perspective as to where we're at and just even, to take a look and go through this pie, because you don't even have time to even assess that you even have this, right?
Yeah.
How can you work on it if you don't even have time to take a look at what you need to work on, right? And this is so much needed. It's very, very nice. I truly enjoyed this. And as Don said, I think we need to ask, give a little teaser to our audience and say, you have to listen to this. And it's a good exercise and great information. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So Winter, just so you know, tomorrow we're preparing for an in-person event tomorrow. It's our monthly mixer and we have a business expo. So I really appreciate the fact that my team, Christy and Martha, are participating today because our hair has been on fire for the last few days.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
We knew it was going to be good. That's why we're here. We just knew.
Thanks for joining.
So I know it's hard. In a much better place tomorrow for the event. We'll be all more centered.
Yes. And I hope afterwards you take that moment to congratulate yourself on accomplishing the big event, right? Really celebrate what you accomplished. Coming back to that occupational wellness dimension, right? Celebrating what you're achieving and acknowledging that work that goes into it. Yeah.
True. And this team has been bringing it from the very first day that we went into shelter in place. So it's been a long haul. So once again, everyone who's watching, this is going to be posted on the livermorechamber.org website, as well as on our social media. As soon as we get it all edited and queued up. And I hope that you will take the time. 1 hour, you are worth it to watch this video, to take care of yourself. We need all hands on deck, but we need everybody to be in a good place, physically and emotionally and mentally, in order to carry on the work that needs to be done. So once again, Winter, thank you very much. If you have any last final words, you're welcome to close out.
I don't feel like I have anything like pearls of wisdom, but Don't forget to breathe.
Very
I do it
important.
every day, but it's amazing how, there's a study that suggests that taking 6 seconds, which is approximately 3 breaths, can really shift how we respond to something. And so sometimes it's hard to say, I'm going to give myself an hour. Sometimes it's hard to say, I'm going to give myself 15 minutes, 5 minutes, but hopefully you can give yourself 3 breaths periodically throughout the day and just see what happens.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Winter, and thank you for joining us today, everyone. And take care of yourselves and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me in.